Hey everyone, welcome to The Leader's Edge, your path to personal and leadership growth. I'm your host, Steve Steele, alongside my co-host and partner in leadership, Ernie DeCumos. As certified speakers, coaches, and corporate facilitators, we're dedicated to bringing you powerful principles to fuel your leadership journey and personal growth. Now, whether you're an entrepreneur just starting out, a new leader taking the reins, or a seasoned pro looking to refine your skills, this show is for you. We'll be diving deep into personal growth strategies to help you strengthen your mindset and leadership abilities. But before we jump in, a huge shout out to all of our amazing listeners. Thank you for joining us each and every week. We wouldn't be here without your incredible support. Now let's get down to business and help you unlock your full potential. Oh, we also have launched our very own YouTube channel, The Leader's Edge. And going forward, we'll be doing every single week episodes. The replay will be available about 24 hours after this show goes live. Ernalita, how are you doing today?
Hi, partner. We're going to have to start over. I forgot to record.
Okay. Hey everyone, welcome to The Leader's Edge, your path to personal and leadership growth. I'm your host, Steve Steele, alongside my co-host and partner in leadership, Ernie DeCumos. As certified speakers, coaches, and corporate facilitators, we're dedicated to bringing you powerful principles to fuel your leadership journey and personal growth. Now, whether you're an entrepreneur just starting out, a new leader taking the reins, or perhaps a seasoned pro to refine your skills, this show is for you. We'll be diving deep into personal growth strategies to help you strengthen your mindset and leadership abilities. But before we jump in, a huge shout out to all of our amazing listeners. Thank you so much for joining us each and every week. We wouldn't be here without your incredible support. We also have launched our very own YouTube channel, The Leader's Edge. And going forward, we'll be doing episodes every single week. The replays will be available within 24 hours after the live show. Now, let's get down to business and help you unlock your full potential. Ernalita, how are you doing today?
Good morning, everyone. This is your co-host, Ernalita DeCumos. I love your energy, partner. Let me just get there. I'm doing great. How are you doing today, partner?
Oh, I am doing wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Ernalita, it's so glad to have you back. We missed you last week. And when you were gone, we got to interview this gentleman we're having today for the show. And I will tell you, it's amazing. John has so much, I've already said his name, sorry, but he has so much information to share with us today. So Ernie, why don't you take just a minute and share with us a little bit about him?
It would be my great pleasure. I will skip the name for now until later. Our guest is the Amazon best-selling author of Winning the Battle for Sales, Lessons on Closing Every Deal from the World's Greatest Military Victories and Social Upheaval. A globally acknowledged sales and marketing thought leader, speaker, and strategist, he has conducted over 1,600 video interviews of thought leaders for Sales Pop, online sales magazine, and YouTube channel. And for audio podcast channels where Sales Pop is rated in the top 2% of most popular shows out of partner. This is phenomenal. I'm not going to say the specific numbers, but 3.3 million podcasts globally ranked by Listen Score. He is CSMO at Pipeliner CRM, and in his spare time, he is an avid martial artist. So high achiever and also martial artist. We do not want to mess with this guy. Please, everyone, help me in welcoming Mr. John Golden to the green room.
Hey, John, so glad to have you. See you today, and talking to you last week was phenomenal. So glad to have you, brother.
Thank you so much for having me, both of you. Thank you.
Yes, it's wonderful. Hey, John, tell us just a second. Just take a minute here and tell us a little about Sales Pop. That's such an interesting podcast.
Yeah, so Sales Pop is it's a kind of our give back from Pipeliner CRM. Pipeliner CRM is our business, but Sales Pop is our kind of altruistic give back, where we just bring interesting and fascinating people to our audience and insights from experts across the world, people who have written books, who have fascinating life stories, who have great insights, or consultants. And it started out focused on sales, but now it's really sales, leadership, marketing, entrepreneurship. And sometimes we even get into areas like mental health awareness. Um,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and so it's been phenomenal. And to be honest, you know, to be really honest with you, it's a great opportunity for me because I get to learn, as you said, from over
Mm,
1,600 people. Every time I do an episode, I learn something new. So I figure if I'm learning something, then I'm bringing something of value to our
absolutely.
audience.
Yes.
Absolutely. That's beautiful.
I do agree, John, because sometimes Steve and I, whenever we have a guest, very good content, which we will tackle today, Steve and I forget that we're radio show hosts, that we would take notes and forget that we're supposed to have questions ready. So I can totally relate. Um, With that being said, let's go ahead and dive in on the content partner. You want to ask the first
Yeah,
question?
let's go ahead. So, John, we talked about a lot of different things last week, and what we're going to bring to the show today. But one of the really amazing things, and I know you have to have this, all of this for Sales Pop, but we talked about as a leader being the preparation and the presence of being in the room. So, true preparation, John, isn't really about just the meeting itself. It starts with what? John, talk to us about that.
Yeah, but to be honest, it starts with how when you wake up first thing in the morning, like how you start your day, because you know, a lot of people when they start their day, like they'll wake up, they won't even if they have a partner or a significant other there, they won't even say hello to that person. They will immediately reach for their phone. And if you
Yeah.
think about it, a lot of people, you reach for your phone, you start looking at the news, and it doesn't matter where you sit on the political spectrum, the news is there to provoke you. It's not there to inform you anymore. Those days are long gone. So,
Mm.
you know, so think about it. You could start your day being a little angry, a little irritated about something you're reading on the news, or perhaps you head onto social media and then I see Ernie standing beside a Lamborghini and I go, "Huh, Ernie's
Mm.
got a Lamborghini. She's doing so much better than I am," because we get into this comparison culture. It turns out it was someone else's Lamborghini, but that doesn't matter. I didn't know that at the time. But my point being is that how you start your day is so incredibly important because you have to look at what are the first inputs I'm putting into my brain. So again, if it's news that's aggravating me, if it's comparison culture through social media, I'm already starting the day at a deficit because I'm not in the greatest frame of mind. So instead, when you wake up in the morning, you're far better off if you know, maybe ignore your, you know, not even email immediately, like ignore all those devices and sort of prepare yourself for the day. And you don't have to like go out and meditate for an hour or do Tai Chi or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Just get yourself in the right frame of mind and sort of say, I'm going to be the best version of myself today. That's what I'm going to do. And that's a choice, and that's the beautiful thing about this is that it's completely within your control. You can choose
Mm.
how you start your day. So that is the most important thing is how, you know, just first thing in the morning, how you start your day, how you prepare yourself. Because if you don't start off in a positive frame of mind and actively say, I'm going to be the best version of yourself, you're kind of outsourcing it to fate. And I just don't think that that's a good idea.
Oh, powerful stuff. I mean, how can you even top all that? But with what you said, John, it's starting in the morning. Does that mean that it's also building a morning routine itself?
Yeah, I would say absolutely build a morning routine. And as I said, it doesn't have to be. I mean, I've talked to some people who their morning routine is like they'll get up and they'll meditate for an hour and they'll do all of this, and I'm like, wow, I envy that you're able to do that. It can just be a morning routine where you wake up, maybe you are grateful. Gratitude is a great way to start your day. I mean, the fact that you woke up in the first place is a plus,
Mhm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yes.
um, and the fact that maybe you woke up in a bed in a house or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of things that if you bring it back to simplicity and just express gratitude for that you woke up, that you have, you have it, you have a job to go to, you have whatever, that puts you in a different frame of mind immediately. So yeah, I would say develop a morning routine, but it doesn't have to be complicated. It can literally be spending a couple of minutes just um, being grateful for what you have and being happy and sort of getting yourself into that right frame of mind. Maybe doing a little bit of breathing or whatever, but yeah, I would say it's absolutely critical to have a morning routine, even if it's only 5 or 10 minutes. It's much better than like jumping out
Mhm.
of bed and rushing to. I mean, a lot of people work at
Right.
home right now, so what do they do? Jump out of bed, rush to their computer and start
Computer.
looking at their emails frantically. What have I missed? And you're thinking, well, 5 or 10 minutes isn't going to cost you anything, to be honest.
Right. And I think one of the things too, and I'm guilty of this myself, is being in that right frame of mind. Because once you get going and you get moving, and if you haven't really taken time to prepare yourself, your awareness of who you are and what's going on, then when you get to the place that you're going, maybe it's your job,
Mhm.
before you really start gauging other people. I mean, the first thing is somebody I ask is how are you today, and I say fine, just fine. We often say that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
when I hear
Mm-hmm.
that, I know that I know when I say that to myself, I know that I'm probably not fine, and I probably
Yeah.
haven't prepared myself, right? So, John, tell us a little bit about before, when you engage people, setting aside to focus and get into the right mindset, and actually, there's a lot of listening that goes on there. So, can you get
Yeah,
us a little bit about that?
yeah, and I think the first thing is like paying attention to yourself. And I think, and this may sound to people like, well, you this little self-indulgent, but no, quite the opposite is paying attention to yourself. You just mentioned there's something, Steve. It's like when somebody says, "How are you?" and you say, "Fine." When you say "fine," I guarantee you, there's a physiological or physical reaction
Mm.
behind that where you're kind of maybe you're kind of sink down a little bit, or you just physically you don't feel on top of your game. So I think that's part of it too, is to pay attention. Your body will tell you what kind of state your mind is in, because mind body connection is so powerful. But it's like if you feel kind of weighed down, if you don't feel energetic, like first thing in the morning, and you don't feel like you have any energy, your body is telling you something. It's telling you, that your mind isn't in the right place. So as you are, maybe if you're commuting into work, or maybe if you're getting ready, maybe what you need to do is maybe listen to 10 or 15 minutes of an uplifting podcast like yours. Maybe put on a piece of music that uplifts you. As I
Hmm.
said, maybe be grateful, but and then once you've done all of that, then say, okay, I'm ready. Now I'm going to own my interactions with the
Oh, I love
world,
that.
right?
Yeah.
And I think ownership is so incredibly important, because we're great at deflecting things, but owning things is much more difficult. So if I walk in and you say, how are you doing? If I'm not saying, I'm doing great, Steve, I'm ready for the day, is there any way I can help you? And just take the focus off of all your baggage that you're carrying with you, and say, my job now is to be present and be the best version of myself. Anything else that's going on in my life, it's not Steve's fault, right? It's not your fault.
Mm.
So why am I projecting it onto you in my, oh, I'm fine. So
Right. No,
again,
right.
I do agree. I just wanted to reiterate. I love the title of our show today. It is called the Authentic Edge, leading with self-awareness and growth. And these are the things that, helps us to become an effective leader. In what we have just discussed, John, my accent is coming out, and what we just discussed, which is having a morning routine, right? What about on times wherein we are so busy and there's so many distractions in our life? What can us as leaders use or do in order to avoid that or manage our time effectively?
yeah, and I think the first thing is Ernalita, is we love to say that we're the busiest we've ever been in our lives. Like we all say
Yeah.
that. People say it to
We-
us.
Where it's a badge, you know.
We wear it as a badge. And so I
Yeah.
started pushing back on people, and even on myself, where I say, oh, the busiest I've ever been. And I always go, are you though, really? Because I say, or are you the most distracted you've ever been? Because there's a big difference between the two.
Mm.
And I know
You nailed it.
I'm
You
aging
nailed it.
myself, but once upon a time, I don't know if you remember, they used to have these time and motion study guys, right, who would come in with a clipboard
Yep.
and they would stand behind somebody and they would time everything you're doing and all of this. And I'm wondering if you had a time and motion person stand behind you throughout your day, how often would they find you jumping on your little device or looking at this or looking at that, or there's a news pop up or there's a sports pop up. And so I think part of it is to, again, own the fact that we allow so many distractions into our lives. And maybe we've also developed this kind of, I guess, this kind of weird arrogance where we think we're so important, that we have to be up on everything. Like if something comes up, I have to respond because I'm so important. Or we live in fear, whereas like, if I don't respond immediately, it's going to reflect
Yeah.
badly on me. I think you have to reorient your thinking and start going, okay, I need to prioritize what is important and deprioritize the things that are not important, because everything can't be a priority, because if everything's a priority, then nothing's a priority, right? And,
Yes.
and so I think you have to be a lot more discerning with your time, and you have to own your distractions, and you have to start, and we're all guilty of it. And one thing a lot of what I'm saying, I'm just going to say sometimes I don't do this either. So I'm not trying to pretend that I'm perfect, far from it. But you have to own your distractions and own the fact that you allow these distractions. And it's like if you say, or somebody says, can I have a minute of your time? And you say yes, right? It's not a minute of your time, because it takes you 20 to 30 minutes to refocus on what you were doing. So think of your little pop-up, your news pop-up or your sports pop-up or whatever. It's doing the same thing. It's probably, you read it for a couple of seconds, but it's probably robbing you of about 20 minutes. Plus, it's filling your head with stuff that you don't need to fill your head with. And that means you're not being present for yourself. Not even, forget about other people right now. You're not even being present for yourself.
Oh, yes, I do agree. Time management and owning your distractions. Yeah, I am one of those people who let distractions take over my time as well. We will have to take a quick break. John just shared, in order to become an authentic leader, we have to prepare and be present. And that's starting in the morning, building a morning routine and time management. And again, owning your own distractions. When we return, we will talk about leadership, communications, and feedback. We will be right back to the Leader's Edge.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Leader's Edge. I'm Steve Steele with my co-host Ernie DeCumos and our special guest today, John Golden. John, Ernie capped it off at that last part of our last segment where we talked about the preparation, we talked about being present, being self-aware, all of those different things that we needed to get up in the morning, to get started when we meet with people. But John, we also talked about time management as well. But now let's jump into a little bit about leadership, communication, and feedback. Can you share a little bit about what that means to you and where we're going with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, one of the most important things about leadership is that every study you read nowadays, it says that people just want to be seen, heard, and understood, right? Seen, heard, and
Yes.
understood.
Yeah.
And so that means, that they want to know that you see them as a person, as who they are. They want to know that you are hearing them, hearing what they're saying, and they want to know that you understand what they're trying to communicate. So I think the first thing from a leader's point of view is to make sure, that you are taking time out of yourself to really understand the person that you're communicating with, or the people that you're communicating with. And second off, know that also know that you are going to be looking at communicating probably differently with different people, because we live nowadays. I mean, somebody said there's like 5 or 6 generations of the
Generations.
in the workforce, right? I don't know where the six is, but anyway,
Absolutely. Yep.
somebody
Yep.
told me it was, and the unknown one.
Mhm.
But the point is, and here's the fascinating thing is, people like to be communicated with differently, and it's not just a generational thing. Like sometimes you have people of like our generation. I was just including you and me, Steve, not Ernie.
Yeah. And not Ernie.
I'm smiling. I'm smiling.
I get it.
Maybe very tech orientated and one. So I think one of the things as a leader that the challenge is that you can't communicate with everybody in the same way, right? So you have to nowadays be able to sort of read the person or understand how they like to be communicated with, and tailor your communication for that person or that group. And the second thing is taking the focus off of you and putting it onto them, because we
Uh-huh.
all come from a leadership tradition of where when we were leaders we spoke, everybody listened, right?
Yeah.
And there
Mhm.
was that dynamic. I think de-emphasizing yourself
I love
and
that.
taking some of the focus off of yourself,
Mhm.
and really um, showing people that you appreciate their expertise, because the thing about
Yes.
leadership today is everything is so um, everything is so specific, and the skills needed and everything, that as a leader you can't possibly know everything about
Mhm.
everything, even on a superficial level. So you
Mhm.
need experts, so therefore you need to give the people you're interacting with, you need to give them their kudos yourself, to say, you are the expert in this area, therefore I am going to
Yes.
listen to you. And so that's the other thing too, is listening. And remember, there's a difference between hearing and listening, right? Hearing is
Oh
just
yeah.
physical activity. Listening, and particularly active listening, is where I'm going to put everything out of my mind. I'm not going to think about what I'm going to say next, but I'm going to listen to what you are saying. And then not only am I going to listen to it, but I'm going to validate it. And this is where the understand part really comes in, is I'm going to say, okay, Steve, yeah, thanks for that. Now, just to be clear, what you're saying is X, Y, and Z. Did I get
Yeah.
that? Did I get that right? And you say, yeah, or not quite. And then we go on. And that's where you are now saying, okay, this person is listening to me, actually trying to understand and really consuming the information. That now you feel in like a different dynamic now than you would if
Really,
I just.
we do. I will
Yeah.
tell you something too, John, and this is this. If I just follow up a little bit here, I know that I find myself sometimes, and this is what I try to work on all the time, is preparing my next thing, something I'm going to say in my head while they're talking.
Hmm.
I'm not listening to them if I'm preparing my next thought, right?
Exactly. No,
And I
absolutely.
do that, and I do that, and I love that part about sitting back and actively listening and just repeating back to them what they said so you fully understand it, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's something that they use in counseling and therapy. They use that in couples therapy and family therapy and things like, if they say the spouse says something, and then the therapist will say, okay, to the
Mhm.
other spouse, okay, now explain back to them what they said. And they're not allowed move on until the original person says, yes, that is
Yes.
exactly what I meant. So that may take you, if you're married, that may take you 10 efforts before you're, in my case, before my wife goes, yeah, I think you got it now. But, but it is really interesting, because, as you said, if we're not focused and we're not actively listening and we're thinking about other things, we actually oftentimes hear things that aren't even said,
Right.
because we brought other things
Yes.
in, because we're not focused enough. And therefore, if you validate with the other person, that's what you said, then they can go, no, that's not quite what I said. This. And the other thing too, see, have you ever seen, like, in a physical meeting or even a virtual one, you can see the person kind of who's like this, right? Ready, they're kind of, they're rising up a little bit, because they're just bursting to say
Mhm,
something, and
mhm, mhm,
at that point, they're not listening, because
mhm,
they're so excited about what they're going to say next. And what
mhm.
does that communicate to you at the end of the day? It communicates that what you're saying isn't that important. So I think as as
Mm.
as
Mhm.
leaders, we have to be very, very conscious of that fact, and conscious of actively listening and validating and understanding and kind of clearing our minds, And that way, then I think at the end of the day, you have people feel very valued because you're interested in them. You're interested in what they've got to say, and you're interested in the skills or the insights that they're bringing to the equation.
Oh my
Absolutely.
goodness. Powerful stuff, John.
It
And if
is.
I could just recap it. So there is no perfect way of communicating with your teammates, right? And I love the verbiage that you use, the emphasizing yourself, focusing on your team, and then practicing active listening. With these tools, John, does that mean that we also have to change who we are as a leader, or is it something that we can do in keeping our own authenticity?
Yeah, I know. I'm a big believer in authenticity. I mean, I don't think you should
Hmm.
change who you are. My favorite, one of my favorite quotes from my compatriot Oscar Wilde is "Be yourself, because everyone else is taken."
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a certain there's a certain profundity in that, because I think the minute you start stopping who you really are, you're clearly you're inauthentic. You're playing a role, and and I think ultimately people can see through that. Um, Now, I would say if your authentic self isn't a very good person, maybe you need to work on yourself first, right? So I wouldn't say
Yes.
just be yourself. If yourself is not the greatest person, maybe you need to work a few things out. But I think authenticity for me is being yourself, but being your real self, and that means that you can show other sides of yourself, and you can maybe be a little bit more personal. Once upon a time, we used to be a little bit more closed off. I think now, like sharing a little bit more about yourself, taking a greater interest in other people, and I think that's where your authenticity really shines through, is when you take an interest in other people, right? Because
Mhm.
I mean, that way you're kind of like, reducing your own ego, if you like, and you are focusing in on what you're learning, and the fascination of other people. But I would say authenticity is so critical, because you want to, if you want people, if you're a leader, you want people to follow you because they believe in not just what you do, they believe in who you are as well,
Mhm.
who you are in
Hmm.
totality. And uh and therefore, and I know sometimes people talk about, oh, you got to be more vulnerable. I don't like that. I don't like that phrase particularly, because I just think it just comes off in the wrong way. I think it's about maybe showing how, showing that you're a little more real, showing your human side. um and I think that's it, because I don't think, at the end of the day, I don't think people want their leaders to be like an open book, and like that person, that oversharing person who comes in and
Yeah.
tries to be your best buddy. That's not what you want. You want somebody who you can respect, who you respect as who they
Mm.
are, who you respect for their leadership. So I think that those are the important things, is to, be your authentic self, show your human side, but don't stray over into anything, um, when you're being too much, because then I think that's inauthentic itself. Because I've heard people saying, "Oh, show your vulnerability and all of that." I think that starts to get a little inauthentic if you're like looking for opportunities to show your
Believe
vulnerability,
me.
or
Yep.
that. I think it's much better off if it's situational. But I think also,
Yes.
and I think also that people admire consistency. People do not like
Hmm.
surprises. Yeah, yeah, we don't, especially bad surprises. But people like consistency. So you have to also look, am I consistent in how I deal with people? Am I consistent in how I operate? Because if I blow hot and cold, or I'm one way one day, one way another day, that is going to unsettle people, because then you don't know what to expect. But if you're
Right.
consistent, just, even if it's at times when you have to deliver bad news or have difficult conversations, but you're consistent in how you do that, then I think people are more apt to listen to you, and to believe that you're authentic. Because again, I think the worst thing you can be is a chameleon. I think
Mm.
Wow.
chameleons are lovely. If you've ever seen chameleons in real life, they're
Hmm.
lovely. You put them
Hmm.
up against colors and they change and everything. But in work, I think chameleons are the worst, because we want to feel like we know that person. We want to feel like we can predict them to some degree. So again, if there's a problem, if something goes wrong, instead of going, "Oh, I don't know how he's going to react to that," you're like,
Right.
"Well, this is how he normally deals with situations like that." So then you feel like it's okay to come and immediately highlight something, as opposed to like, well, maybe we need to pick the right moment. If you're saying maybe we need to pick the right moment with your leader, that's good information for the leader. That means you're not consistent, and
Mm.
uh, and as a result of that, you're not always getting the information when you need it.
Yeah, that is so true. That is so true because of the fact that if you have to pick a time to sit down with your leader, and because you don't know how they're going to react or how they're going to
Mhm.
respond, then there is definitely inconsistency in that because then you have to have all this guesswork. And people call that, well, they're not predictable, but
Mhm.
I don't want it to be predictable. I just want it to be authentic, right?
Yeah,
And
and
so
consistent.
that very consistent, very authentic, absolutely. And John, you did talk a little bit also about as self awareness as being a
Mm.
really long life or lifelong gift. And we, I remember we talked about this when we had our content building.
Content.
Is yeah that we were talking about how that appears more late in life. People understand that self
Yeah.
awareness more late in life, but you also talk about taking intentional timeouts to reflect. Can you just chat a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I mean, self awareness. Yeah, I think self awareness is the greatest gift you can give yourself. I think self awareness, lack of self awareness, is the greatest inhibitor to success in business and in life, quite frankly. But it is also a very difficult thing. It's not something that comes naturally to us. And as I said to you, yes, Steve, when we talked before, whatever level of self awareness I have today, unfortunately, I probably developed it much later in life than I would have liked. So, if you're a younger person out there listening, this is the greatest gift you can give yourself, and the greatest gift we can give you today is the concept of self awareness. And what does self awareness mean at the end of the day? It means that you have to understand yourself, and you have to
Mm.
understand how you operate in the world, how you show up, how you react to circumstances, to different situations. And the only way you will achieve that is by spending some time on self reflection and spending some time with yourself. And now we live in a world today that absolutely discourages that. It does not want you,
Yeah.
the world today does not want you to self reflect, does not want you to spend a minute with your own thoughts. Again, we have this thing, right? You have.
Hmm.
You have 10 minutes where you have no meetings, you've nothing pressing. What do? You jump on your phone and doom scroll, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To Yeah, right. Rather than, there you have 10 minutes to maybe go sit outside, maybe to
Oh,
take a short walk, and just think about, put away your phone and all of that, and just think about yourself and reflect on, where are you today? How have you handled things? Even recently, like the last few days when situations came up, how did you handle them? Could you handle them any better? What did that tell you about yourself? How are you, again, as I said, your body will tell you, how are you feeling? Am I always lacking in energy? Am I always feeling kind of, the weight of the world is on my shoulders? Well, that is telling you something. There are things in your life then that you need to change. So, and again, it's like in the past, like I have seen people who in a professional setting have come into me and said, I want to have this job, and why am I not promoted into this? And you're looking at them and you're going like, because you're like the worst fit for this job, right?
yeah.
And you're the only one who can't see it right now. And unfortunately, then that person is going to have so much disappointment because they're constantly feeling that things are not being given to them, or they're not being, or people are being unfair to them, and they don't realize that it's themselves. So I think, as I said, the greatest gift you can give yourself is self-awareness, but also ownership and accountability. It's like, I'm responsible for my own life. So whenever I complain about things or things aren't going the way I want, the first place I need to start is with myself, and say, okay, things happen from outside, sure, and circumstances happen, but you own how you react to them. You also
Mhm.
Hmm.
own whether you leave yourself in that situation or whether you remove yourself from that situation.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
so I think self-awareness and then ownership and accountability all come together. And I think once you understand yourself and you gain some level of self-awareness, you start immediately to see how things change for you, how you, and again, I think it comes back, Steve, to the kind of consistency and you're consistent
That's
in how you
powerful.
show up in the world. You're consistent in how you do things. Um, but as I said, the only way you can do this is intentionally. You have to set aside time. You have to take notice of. Hey, if we were half as good at taking notice of all the things we do as we are at noticing other people, and let's
Yes.
face it,
Mm.
we're the greatest. We're fantastic at giving advice to other people how to what they should do or how they should live their lives. We're terrible with ourselves. So I think you got to flip that around and start taking time out to notice and then notice the things that maybe you need to work on, maybe you need to remove, maybe the things that you need to accentuate, you need to be more of. Um, but absolutely, I think you have to take that time out, and I know it's tough because, as I said, we live in a world of so many distractions and every day. You remember once upon a time, you would even go into a waiting room somewhere, and maybe there'd be like two old magazines, and whatever.
Yes.
But people would maybe even speak to each other or look at each other or take in
Yeah.
their surroundings or whatever. Now, we're all head down. We're all head
Hmm.
down immediately,
Oh,
and everywhere you go, and when your head is down, you're seeing this much of the world,
yes.
Mm.
and when your head
That's
up is you're seeing so much more
that's
of the
right.
world. And I think
That's
so. I
right.
think that's the first step, is to lift your head up, take notice of the world around you, and take notice of how you operate within it.
Oh, that's
That
cool.
is
That's
so
amazing.
beautiful. I
Yeah.
definitely agree with that, John, because the technology, especially the phones, are created to supposedly help us connect with other people, others that are far away. But what it's done is it's disconnecting us to
That's
where we
right.
are today, to the environment that we are on or we are in. So it's like, yeah, it's finding the balance between the two, I believe. But I love the content that you shared, as far as people are so afraid to reflect nowadays. And I think it's because of the noise that we're so
Mhm.
busy entertaining, and that's through our phones. And
Yeah.
today,
Yeah.
when you are with people and there's no conversations that's happening, it's like very awkward, right?
Yeah, that
Very.
is true. People have lost that art. It's like, oh, what do we do? Can I just look at my phone, please? Because we're awkwardly
Hmm.
standing
Exactly.
here together. Or the
Hmm.
other thing, Ernlita, I think that has become uh, something that we all need to pay attention to, is just we've become really rude. Because
Mm,
like I could be standing there talking to you, and then my phone buzzes, and in the middle of my sentence to you, I look down, and then I go, and then I come back and finish my sentence. But I've just communicated to you that my
Hmm.
conversation with you is not as important as perhaps something else. It's like those, remember the old day, those people who would never commit to, do you want to go here on Saturday? And they'd be like, oh, yeah, yeah, that sounds good. But I'll let you know later in the week. And you go, yeah, because you're waiting for a better offer, right?
oh yes.
So, and this is what we're kind of communicating all the time, is when we're talking to people and then we're getting distracted by something that's popping up, we're going, yeah, this is fascinating and all that, but there might be something more fascinating down here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I do agree. I'm gonna be transparent. That's something that has become my pet peeve, when you ask somebody something for a certain date, and they would say, I would confirm with you tomorrow afternoon. I'm like, what is like the difference between today and tomorrow afternoon that you cannot commit? But anyway, we will need to take a quick break. John just shared a ton of value about leading, communicating effectively, authenticity, self awareness, and even touch on vulnerability. When we return, I don't know if I want to share what we're going to talk about when we return. Well, you're just going to have to stick, just listen in and hear what we have to share when we return. But we will be right back to the Leader's Edge.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Leader's Edge. I'm Steve Steele with my co-host Ernie DeCumos and our special guest today, John Golden. That was a lot of stuff in there. That last, I say stuff, but it was a lot of content, John. It was amazing. All the different things that you shared and you taught us about leadership, communication, and self-awareness, authenticity. Beautiful, John. We talked a little bit too, and I know you had to share this a little bit about vulnerability, but can you? Is embracing vulnerability? Does it lead to the growth piece? I want to talk about vulnerability just a little bit.
It's his favorite subject, just FYI.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think yes, it does. Like I said, is I don't like when things become like buzzwords, right? And I think authenticity became a buzzword, vulnerability became a buzzword, and I think that takes away, if you like, I think from the authenticity of it. But I think when it comes to vulnerability, is especially for leaders nowadays, I think the first thing that you have to tell yourself um, is that you're not the expert, right? You're not the expert in
Right.
everything,
Yes.
and you're
Right.
not, and that your job. I mean, once upon a time, certainly when I came into leadership, originally and stuff, it was a little bit more command and control. It was a little bit more of I'd like to say, a benign dictatorship.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
but as I said, as things have progressed, it's like number one, I think leadership. The first thing you should do is look to flatten organizations anyway, because I think the old idea of hierarchical structures is it's not sustainable in the way
Not in-
we operate today. Uh, but the thing is that your job today is to find the right people and the right skill sets to deliver, and find the experts and find the people who know things that you don't know.
Right.
Because otherwise, it's like that
Yes.
old saying is like, buying a dog and barking yourself. What's the point in that? Um,
Mm.
Right.
so I think that is one of the key things, is first of all to reorient your thinking, and I think that's the first vulnerability piece, if you like, and I think that's a very practical one, is to say my job today is to find experts and people who know a lot more than I know, and in fact and may know a ton more than I know, but my job is to get them together and come together as a team. So I need to communicate the fact that I have hired you as an expert. I've hired
Right.
you
Mm.
because you are better, way better at what you do than I could ever be. And that's why I'm here. And therefore, I think you start to come into that concept of servant leadership, right?
Yes.
You're there to serve the team. You're there to bring them together. You're there to help them to be successful. So I think that is an incredibly important part. And then I think is the ability to also to, and I think this is a key part of vulnerability, is to admit when you don't know things. And that's tough sometimes.
It,
Somebody asked me the other day about experts, and I was saying, I said to him, oh yeah, I said, the experts I trust are the ones who tell you when they don't know something. I
yeah.
said, I'll
Mm.
trust them
That's right.
way
Yeah.
more than I'll trust somebody who seems to have the answer to everything, because you couldn't possibly have the answer to everything.
Yes. I
And
do agree.
I mean, have you ever been like with somebody who's like a top of their field, maybe a medical person or whatever, and then you ask them a question, they go, I don't know. I don't know if that's interesting. And then you
Mhm.
go, okay, now I trust that person more because they're not just trying to, bamboozle me
Right.
with some technical stuff. So I think being able to admit what you don't know is, I think that is such a trust builder. And that takes a little bit of vulnerability and a little bit of confidence to be able to say, actually, I don't know. And when somebody comes and asks you a question, say, I don't know. Actually, who would be much better person to ask would be Ernalita or Steve. They know much more about this than I do. And I think that takes its own level of vulnerability. And then I think the other things, Steve, is and I think this is just something for the world, is we have to get back to being able to say we're sorry,
Yeah.
to
Mm.
apologize and own
Yeah.
things. It's such
Yeah.
a, I mean, have you ever seen, I mean, I hate to bring politicians into this, but I mean, have you ever seen those frustrating interviews or whatever where politicians just go, where somebody points out, you're completely wrong about this, and they will never own it. They will never
Yeah.
apologize for it. They will just deflect. But I feel like that's become pervasive in the world, where people are afraid or have lost the art of just simply just saying, I'm sorry, or that was my fault. They always
Mhm.
feel like they have to justify or put caveats in, and there's a huge power in just saying sorry,
Yeah.
literally, and moving on. And
Absolutely.
and it, to be honest, and it's amazing when you do that, when you just say, "Oh yeah, that was my fault. Sorry, I'll figure that out in the future." Whatever. People are much more kind of, "Oh, okay, great, let's move on." And I feel this in work culture sometimes. You have this thing like, "Ooh, I'm afraid to admit that that was my fault, because maybe it'll reflect badly on me, or this or that." So I come up with some way of saying, "Yeah, this was our fault, but here are the extenuating circumstances and all that," and that doesn't satisfy anybody at the end of the
No.
Yeah.
day.
But
Or
John,
worse, sorry, I was going to say, or worse, you
yeah,
go, "I'm sorry that happened. It was one of my team did this."
Yes. That's the
right,
bad
right. Yeah,
thing.
that's the bad thing. And John, doesn't that, I mean, what kind of strikes me here a little bit is when we're afraid to do that, we're afraid to own it. Doesn't that really have a lot to do with the culture that we're in as in the environment, the culture, which is usually established from leadership top down, because
Yeah.
it's not a safe place. So you don't feel like you can own it. You have to come up with an excuse. You have to come up with some kind of reason, and you're at a point where you're just going to make something up, or you're going to say something that doesn't even make sense, but you don't want to admit that you don't know, because you're going to get, somehow you feel like you're going to get, whatever somebody does, they,
Yeah.
you know
No, I mean, yeah, no, I would
yeah,
totally,
it's just like
yeah, I would, no, I would totally agree with that. But I would say as well is that it often just takes one person to do it, to start to change a
Mhm.
culture. Because here's the other thing too. I mean, we live in this world today. Like, I mean, where people are just always like ranting and shouting at each other and calling
Yeah.
each other. Like, if you don't agree with me, you're stupid or whatever. Nobody's mind was ever changed by somebody calling them stupid, and you go, "Oh, that person just called me stupid. I'll adopt their ideas." No, that you're like, forget you. um, what do we do in life? We look at people, we look at how they act and how they operate. So modeling behavior that's what changes. That's where we look at somebody and we go, they seem to have their stuff together. They seem to, I like
Mhm.
the way they operate. I like the outcomes they get. Maybe I should start to be a little bit more like them. And I think this
Mhm.
is, and I think this is one of those situations where perhaps if more people started, it doesn't even have to be the leader, if more people started just owning things and just apologize, just taking ownership of it, saying sorry, moved on, modeling that behavior, because I think other people would look at that and go, wow, that's really, number one, in the culture you're talking about, they probably go, that's really brave. Like, I admire that person. But then when they realize that everything kind of moved on from there. There wasn't any big blow. There wasn't any,
Right.
maybe then you start to adopt it. But I would say, yeah, uh, the fastest way to change culture is for the leader to start modeling these behaviors. But if the leadership isn't modeling the behaviors, then I think it's down to individuals to start doing it. And then, to be honest, at the end of the day, if you get punished for that, then you're not in the right place anyway.
Right. You are
And
Yes.
right.
and it's got nothing to do with that particular circumstance. It's just got to do with the whole situation. You're in the wrong place. You're in
Absolutely.
the wrong environment. You're around the wrong people. And the thing at the end of the day, if you're around the wrong people, you have it within your control to remove yourself.
Mm.
And to be honest, in the world we live in today, it is far easier than it ever has been. I think to get a new job, to move, to do something yourself. I mean, we're not so tied, location
Mhm.
wise, etc. In many jobs, and so I think you have that opportunity. But I think it's down to your responsibility. If you if you feel that that's something that you could never do, you couldn't be the one to just own something and and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, that was my mistake." Then you're in the wrong place.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
do agree. John, I do want to ask this last question. I know we have about 60 seconds to do this. How does growth correlate with all the things that we just talked about this morning?
Mhm.
Self-awareness, vulnerability, authenticity. How does growth correlate with all of those?
Well, I think all of those are huge growth. Yeah, those are all growth enablers, if you like. I think
Yeah, good word.
you become a, as I said, at the end of the day, you become a role model for other people.
Mm,
You bring some positive, you bring some greater positivity to the world. So, and you're impacting the people around you, the people who work for you, the people who surround you, your personal life, etc. And that will make a far bigger impact on the world than it will ranting on the internet or on Facebook or whatever, and
mm,
calling out big global issues that you have no control over. If you really want to make a positive contribution to the world, make it to the community
Yes,
that you exist in, or the communities that you exist in, by being the best version of yourself.
I
oh,
love it.
beautifully,
Beautiful.
beautifully said. And thank you so much for the amazing teaching today, John. I'm sure our listeners are wondering, what are you currently working on and how can people reach out to you?
Yeah, I mean, they can reach out to me on LinkedIn, John Golden. You can see my Sales Pop podcast. We put out episodes nearly every day, release a couple of times a week. Also, Pipeliner CRM. You know, we're changing the CRM market. With the CRM that salespeople like to use, we're leading the way on AI. We're bringing AI agents into Pipeliner. We're actually releasing our first one this month. So we're also helping to revolutionize how people interact with technology, because I do believe AI is it's going to be a great democratizer in many ways, but it's also going to allow us to unlock the power of systems like ours, because we're going to take away the learning curve, because AI
Mm.
is going to be able to help you interact with the systems in different ways. So you can find me on LinkedIn. You find me on the Sales Pop podcast. I interview fascinating people from, as I said, all corners of the globe on so many different subjects. It's a blessing for me, because basically I get to learn and listen to other people. And yeah,
Awesome.
Beautiful.
Again, thank you so much, John, for today's teaching. And to our listeners, if you have a product, service, or rebranding that you're launching in your company, we would love to help you promote it globally. Please contact our producer, Robert Ciolino, at robert.ciolino, Ciolino, at voiceamerica.com for more information.
And Ernalita, sneak peek for next Thursday's episode. We are so excited to welcome our special guest, Eber Mania, a certified speaker, coach, and trainer from the John Maxwell leadership team. So don't miss it next Thursday on the Leader's Edge. And John, as always, wow, what an amazing day. Thank you so much for being here. We certainly appreciate it.
yeah. Listen, thank you so much, both of you, for having me and for listening to me for this long.
It's beautiful. It's absolutely
It
beautiful.
wasn't, it didn't even feel this long, to be honest with you.
No, it didn't.
And yes, we wanted to say thank you to all of our listeners and friends, because without you, the Leader's Edge would not be possible. We are grateful to have you here and so excited to connect with you next time. But for now, bye
Bye,
everyone.